Welcome to the Renegade Health Boss podcast, where we push the boundaries of what's possible in health and wellness. I'm your host, Heather Gray, a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner. And each week we dive deep into the world of physical, mental, spiritual health, biohacking, relationships. But we're not just talking about the basics. I'm bringing you conversations with the true renegades, experts who are challenging the status quo in their fields, breaking barriers, and uncovering the real truth behind what it takes to live an incredible, joy-filled, and optimized life. If you're ready to step out of the ordinary and step into a life of extraordinary health and happiness, you're in the right place. Let's get started on this journey to becoming your own Renegade Health Boss. And before we jump in, let's hear a word from our sponsor. You're already empowering your patients to lead a healthier, more vibrant lives. As a practitioner, you're at the forefront of extending their health span, promoting strength, vitality, and overall wellness. It all begins with the right support, trusted high-quality nutritional supplements. At MHP Vitamins, we provide premium, practitioner-grade supplements designed to support the unique needs of your patients. Whether they're fighting inflammation, boosting energy, or enhancing immune function, our scientifically backed formulas help them thrive. As a trusted practitioner, your recommendations make a significant impact. At MHP Vitamins, we're committed to providing you with the tools to continue supporting your patients on their journey towards ideal health. The premium supplements are carefully formulated to target specific health concerns and deliver the essential nutrients your patients need to thrive. Dedicated to making sure your practice runs effortlessly by offering top-tier customer care, same-day shipping, and the efficacy of our new office and warehouse. Through our affiliate program, you can extend these benefits directly to your patients and provide them with trusted, high-quality products while providing a valuable partnership that supports both you and your patient's health span and your practice. Join the growing community of health professionals who trust MHP Vitamins to empower their patients' health journeys. Together, we can support wellness one patient at a time. Let's welcome Lynn to the show.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's great to be here with you and everybody out there. And yeah, we've seen lots of things about healing all kinds of illnesses, everything from chronic fatigue to cancer and everything in between. So I'm going to be excited to talk about it.
I'm excited to hear. I've listened to quite a few of your talks, read your book, and you're not only, there's an awesomeness of someone who can bring heavy, kind of hard conversations and bring some humor, levity, and kind of break it down to simple pieces. And I think you're brilliant at doing that. That's probably your journalistic background that helps you with that. But tell us a little bit about Lynne McTaggart and how did you get started?
Okay, well, I started in a very different place, Heather. I mean, I studied journalism and literature at university. I went to two different universities and I graduated, went to New York, and thought, I'm going to be an investigative reporter. And my plan over those first few years was to put bad guys in jail. And that my first big story was breaking a load of baby selling rings around the world. And that became my first book, The Baby Brokers. It was all these kinds of lawyers who were working with finders in different countries like Germany and places around the US. And also in places where abortion was illegal, and basically bringing girls over to the States and having their babies in the States and handing them over to desperate couples for extraordinary fees. So I broke the story by posing as an unwed mother. Remember, this is me in my 20s. And then as a prospective adoptive parent. And this was going to be my life. And I did other investigative reporting. And then in my 30s, I got ill with an undiagnosed illness. To Today, it would be called a faulty microbiome, and people would know immediately what to do about it. Back then, they didn't. And I went through a whole bunch of alternative practices and conventional practices. Um, in fact, the outer rim of alternative practices before realizing I'm probably going to have to figure this out for myself. So I researched what I thought I had, and then I found a pioneering doctor here in the UK where I live who was just pioneering gut issues like this. And together we got me better. So I was so inspired by this. And my husband, who's also a journalist, was as well. So we decided to start what was a newsletter, now is an international magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You. In the course of doing that, and to do that, we study the medical literature about what works and what doesn't work in both sides of the aisle, conventional and alternative. But in the course of doing that, I kept coming across very good studies of things like spiritual healing. And I kept thinking to myself, wait a minute, if you can have a thought and send it to someone else and make them better, that completely undermines everything we think about how the world works. So I set out trying to find that why this was. I thought I was looking for human energy fields. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I thought I'll talk to a few scientists working in consciousness research. They'll give me the answer. I'll write it up. There you go. Well, that wasn't what happened. What happened was I found with all of these scientists that each of them had discovered a tiny piece of what compounded into a completely new view of the world, a new science, and a new description, a new understanding of what it is to be a human being. So that became my work, The Field, and my book, The Field. And after I published that book, which put together all of this science and essentially decoded it and also synthesized it, because scientists aren't very good at speaking in plain English. They talk in math, they talk in code, and they also aren't very good at stepping beyond their experimental findings. They don't ever want to speculate. So I realized that synthesis was going to have to be down to me. So that became my book, The Field. But there was a lot of unfinished business. The idea with many of the studies that thoughts were an actual something with the capacity to change physical matter. So the journalist in me was saying, well, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about a tiny subtle effect? Or are we talking about curing cancer with our thoughts? How far can we take this? And also, what happens when a group of people, a large group of people, are having the same thought at the same time? Does that magnify the effect? So I wanted to test that. And that became the intention experiment. And then shrinking that down became the power of 8. And so, as you can see, my career has essentially followed my inquiry, my enthusiasms. And that's how I got into this. And that's how I found that large groups and small can be extraordinary, miraculous healing.
That's absolutely incredible. Holy shit, Lynne McTaggart. I know you like to say WTF, which is also another favorite of mine. I like to say holy shit. But I somehow in my journalism, I forgot I did not see that beginning book of yours. Like I just researched, your stuff later, and I had no idea what a badass you are to break a story like that, and how heartbreaking. Like that had to have been really heavy to kind of be in that space for so long.
Oh, the baby brokers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were guys doing incredible things. These were all lawyers doing what was considered gray market adoption and not even a crime at all. That was the whole point of the book. This is not a crime. People are taking money in toilets for, 25 grand and handing over the babies of these poor hapless women. And there was no law against it. So it was, I testified in Congress about it. And one of the lawyers had a 192 count indictment after I published the story. He got arrested, but they didn't have a law to prosecute him. He got off. And the thing was, these lawyers were all very ingenious. One of them actually had advertisements. This is a guy in California, a lawyer, said, for women, don't have that baby or don't have that abortion. Have your baby and a Caribbean vacation at the same time. And he literally set up a Caribbean home for the unwed and, would arrange for the adoption of these babies. And I now, because that book was published in 1980, I'm now getting letters from grown-up kids who believe they were one of these types of adoptions and just wondering if I have any information about it. So it was heartbreaking, but it was, it was a day of hidden. I did a lot of work with hidden tape recorders and all kinds of stuff like that. As I say, was
You're
my
such
gonna
a
be my job.
badass. I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, I love it. Um, so it's funny because we talk about this, especially in Lyme disease. A lot of folks, because they had been medically gaslighted for so long, like the disease that I had for 27 years was just recognized by the CDC last year. Like, talk about mind blowing, right? Holy shit. But sadly, when folks get their diagnosis, right, they have a tendency to wear that like a badge of honor, like a cloak, and they get all snuggly in it and get a little on the victim-y side. And I was guilty of this too in the beginning. And it's so hard and it's so controversial to when I'm working with folks is that you've got to get out of the victim mentality. You've got to change your mind set if you're ever going to get better, right? But there's also this funny part of what is it called? Spiritual bypassing, right? So can you talk a
Mm.
little bit about like what's the edge from, being victim to spiritual bypassing?
Okay, when you say spiritual bypassing, let me just be clear what you mean so I can address that properly.
So it's like, pretending that everything is okay and just the toxic positivity, right?
Right, right. Absolutely. I mean, one of the ways that I think you can easily overcome that, probably the easiest way of all, is a power of eight group. One of the things that happened to me was after discovering thoughts or things and wanting to know how far we can take it, I set up a thing called the intention experiment, where I was working with scientists from many prestigious universities who would set up an experiment. And then I would invite my readers around the globe to take part in this experiment, holding the same thought at the same time. And it was done on my website, it was done on YouTube, it was done on many platforms. And we used scientists from Penn State, from Princeton, from University of Arizona, University of California, and many others. And switched all the time, so we couldn't be it couldn't be claimed that we were, biased. But we've run 41 to date, everything from trying to uh, make seeds grow faster to making water more pure to lowering violence in war-torn areas to healing someone of post-traumatic stress disorder. Of those 41 experiments, 37 have shown measurable, positive, mostly significant effects, as measured by the scientists. There's no pharmaceutical drug, with that kind of consistent track record. After doing this for a year, so this is back in 2008, I wanted to see what would happen if I shrunk this down to a small group. And I did. I put people into groups of 8 or so. And by the way, it doesn't have to be 8. I was just kicking around the idea with my husband, also a great journalist, and said, maybe I'll put people in groups of 8 or so, have them send intention to each other or somebody with a health challenge, see what happens. And he said, I love it, the power of 8. So that's how the name came about, total accident. And that's how the work came about, total accident. But what I discovered, I thought it was going to be a very mild effect, but what I discovered is that these groups of 8 are powerful healing mechanisms. And from that first get-go, we had a woman with cataracts who said she was 80% better, and a woman with very crippling arthritis who walked in normally the next day after doing this. And since that time, I've had 3 people improve or get healed of paralysis. 2 people stood up out of their wheelchairs and one pushed it away. I've had people with stage 4 cancer get healed with no chemo, no radiotherapy, just doing intention in a group and saying to me, I am healed. Now, I never discourage anybody from seeking any kind of medical treatment, but when she got home from this retreat of ours, she was healed. So the group does a lot of things, getting back to your question, but the group offers extraordinary support. Not only are a group of people, and when I run courses, like I'm about to run a master class, Power of 8 Intention master class, which kicks off in February 17th. I run year-long courses where I put people in groups and let them work together in the groups. And they start as a group of strangers and they end up with an intention family, a loving group of people that have their back, a loving group they can be honest with. They don't have to pretend and do a spiritual bypass. They can cry about their situation. I see many in our retreats, many people crying and releasing their experience and finally talking about it. So there is that, the spiritual bypass. However, I'm one of those people who do say, never give up. And I talk about that personally because I had my own health challenge about 5 years ago. And I was born with strange hips. So is my brother and my dad and my aunt. We all had slight hip dysplasias. And so we all had slightly odd posture, just slightly went forward. And I was able to bypass that for years and years and years and with active life. But about 5 years ago, I started limping, and I started limping worse and worse and worse and worse. And I tried everything, every alternative treatment, and finally went to a surgeon. And when I listened to what she was going to do, I said, and one of the things that happened in all of those treatments was the languaging of all of those practitioners. Their work was good. Their languaging in almost all of them was terrible. So bad that I actually started taking notes. I thought there's a course to be given on this with professionals. And I do. I run a thing called Become a Better Healer with the Power of 8, instructing these people about the power of their thoughts and words. So the woman I ultimately went to, the surgeon, she got me because I said, I didn't want to do any of that, don't want to have surgery. And she said, I said, what want I be able to do after I get this surgery? And she said, what is it called? When you jump out of an airplane. So, sky flying or whatever it is. She said, yeah, probably parachute jumping you won't be able to do. And I went, right. She had me at parachute jumping. I thought, right. I could imagine me doing everything all over again. And it's true. And I do. And I'm back to HIIT classes and yoga and everything else. But one thing that happened through that whole process was not only the positivity of her, but I kept my own positivity of, I'm going to get healed. And I think that's really important. Not to say don't deny what you have, but always say, I can be healed. I used to even watch a guilty pleasure on TV called Strictly Come Dancing with all these people doing ballroom dancing. And I said to myself, I'm going to learn how to do ballroom dancing and I'm going to be them. And, by this time I wasn't walking very well, but I was moving my feet on my sofa saying, oh, I could do that. I could do that. And I was imagining doing that. And that's what I teach my students too. You don't give up. And the great thing about a group is they don't allow you to give up. Now, I have 2 students I can think of off the bat who had chronic fatigue. One of them was Patty. Patty could get up and walk her dog for 10 minutes and then had to go back to bed. That's how tough it was for her. She said her legs were like wet noodles. So we had the group do an intention. And she had tried all kinds of alternative things and nothing was getting her much better. So I recommended that her group do an intention to find the source of this chronic fatigue. So they did, and she suddenly got a hit, just an inspiration. I should check on what's going on in my dressing room. So she had some experts come, and lo and behold, they found all this black mold behind them. And that was the source. Once they cleared that out, she was back to lifting weights in a week. There was that person. There was Sam. He was unable to work. He couldn't do anything. And he joined a group and worked with us for a year. And by the end of it, he was back working, had all this freelance work. He was, he was back to his normal self. Now, in Patty's case, it was an intention to find the source. In Sam's, it was just clearly they were intending for his chronic fatigue to be healed. So I think there's a mix here of intention. There's no question it works. Thoughts that are things that affect other things. The positivity of the group, the safe container. There's always a group effect. Groups cause collective effervescence, as someone said. And there's also this feeling of altruism. A lot of the time in a Power of 8 group, you are intending for someone else. And one thing that I've discovered is that those intentions are just as powerful as intentions for yourself in terms of healing you. There's an extraordinary rebound effect that I see not only in the Power of 8 groups, but also in our intention experiments. We have about 40% of people, after they do a peace intention experiment, because I survey the participants to find out what's happened to them, about 40% say their lives have become more peaceful. They're getting along better with their partners or their children or their boss or their coworkers. And about half are saying they feel more in love with everyone they come in contact with. But also, about a third report healings or serious improvements in particular medical conditions. So there's an extraordinary rebound effect that happens, and it happens again and again in Power of 8 groups. Just as many people get healed from healing someone else as getting healing themselves.
I absolutely adore this conversation. We need to pause real quick for a commercial. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back.
Dr. Nathan Bryan here with our N101 nitric oxide orally disintegrating tablet. Nitric oxide is a gas, so how do we deliver a bioactive gas in a solid dose form? We've created a solid dose form of bioactive gas. This lozenge, which is designed to have a resident time of 5 to 6 minutes. So you take this lozenge, you put it in your mouth, don't chew it, don't swallow it. Let it dissolve. As it's dissolving, it's releasing a certain amount of nitric oxide over a certain period of time. And that release of nitric oxide is designed to recapitulate nitric oxide production and nitric oxide signaling. So if your body can't make nitric oxide for whatever reason, this product delivers it for you. But more importantly, the technology in this lozenge recouples the NOS enzyme, so we improve endothelial function. We improve the body's ability to make nitric oxide on its own. And because it's an orally disintegrating tablet that sits on the top of the tongue and moves around, it's killing the bad bacteria. It's maintaining the diversity of the oral microbiome. We're improving the nitrate-reducing bacteria, so we're improving the oral microbiome. So this product generates nitric oxide and improves the body's ability to make nitric oxide through both pathways, endothelial nitric oxide production through restoration of the oral microbiome. There's no other product on the market that does what this product does. This is an orally disintegrating tablet that releases nitric oxide. We can quantify it, we can detect it, we can verify it. So if your body can't make nitric oxide, we do it for you. N101 activating lozenges. Get it today.
Welcome back. Oh my gosh, are your minds blown just as much as I have? If you've done any research on Miss Lynn here, she talks, her intention experiment is just absolutely fascinating because, she sent these intentions to these different groups of seeds and then, actually had research of how much certain seeds grew more compared to the other ones that had intentions set to them. And I always love referring back to Louise Hayes. She was like the first one I heard talk about this. She's like, think about something that turns you on. right? And tell me you don't have a physical reaction that happens, right? I think that's like one of the easiest ones for people. Or think of something like putting a lemon in your mouth, right? What does your mouth do? So it's been studied, but it still just blows my brain on how little some folks take this type of work seriously, right? That it's still woo-woo and it's still fringe and it's still that, when there's so much research behind it. So, and I love your groups because, right, even with chronic illness, especially like Lyme disease, it can be so isolating. And I imagine just even being in the group setting community also has got a huge benefit to it as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we are so isolated these days, and we were even more isolated after COVID. I think a lot of us got post-traumatic stress disorder just from isolation. All of those months of not being able to touch people, hug people, be with people. And I found numerous members of my masterclass and other courses found being in a group, because in these cases, they're always virtual groups. People can meet in person, but a lot of the time they're meeting virtually and they're on Zoom just as we are. And yet they are connected. And I've had so many people say that it was a lifeline for them during illness, during COVID. I had one guy called Jerry who joined the masterclass during COVID. And at the end of it, he joined it again. And I said, Jerry, you're going to get the same information. He said, no, it's going to be completely different because it's a new group. And he said, what was the most amazing for me was love, was compassion, was connection. With all of these people, I've had more love during the COVID season than at any time in my life. And he said at the end of the next year, I now know what love is, even if you're getting it through the airwaves. And so I think that connection is really important, but it goes even further than that, Heather. We did brainwave studies on Power of 8 groups because I wanted to know, how come this is working? Why are we having these miraculous healings? And I worked with a team of neuroscientists from Life University, one of the largest chiropractic universities in the world. They put their neuroscience team at my disposal. And so we did these studies using student volunteers who had never done any of this stuff before, including meditation. We put an EEG cap on one member of 7 groups, and then we measured them. And to our astonishment, we thought the measurements were going to look almost identical to those of meditation, brainwave signatures, just like meditation, which causes the brain to slow down and for there to be more alpha waves rather than the faster brain waves, beta brain waves that we have in ordinary waking consciousness. But that's not what they were doing with these Power of 8 groups. The studies showed something really, really different. They showed that the brain wasn't slowing down, it was turning off. Certain parts of the brain, the parietal lobes, which sit back here, they help us navigate through space. They tell us, this is me, this is not me. They were dialed way down. And so were parts of the frontal lobes, the right frontal lobes, involved in worry, doubt, negativity. They were dialed way down too. These brainwave signatures look nothing like meditation, but what they looked almost identical to were brainwave studies done by the University of Pennsylvania on Sufi masters during chanting and Buddhist monks during ecstatic prayer. So these are people in a state of ecstatic oneness during Power of 8 groups. And that is what people say to me all the time. They say, I was crying uncontrollably. I had enormous heat going up and down my arms. I got goosebumps. I was feeling flashes of and seeing flashes of light, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was seeing light beings behind us. We've had all kinds of things like that. And these are people who are either together in person or on the internet, on Zoom. and still having the same effects. So these are people in a state of ecstatic oneness. And I think that is the big essence of healing, because we don't experience life like that. We experience life in separation as lonely people on a lonely planet in a lonely universe. But during these Power of Eight groups, we get to experience true oneness. And we always talk about, hey, we're all one. And also a lot of people ask me, how do I enter the field? And I have to always say, you don't have to enter it. You are the field. You're part of the field. But people don't experience life like that. So during a Power of Eight group, they do. And I think that sense of oneness, that sense of total being as something larger than their little selves, is the healing secret sauce. I think that's why we're seeing people get up out of their wheelchairs.
Absolutely incredible. And I just love how nonchalantly you say, oh, and I had the disposal of this neuro team at my disposal. I'm like, you are such a badass. Like, I can't even. So, oh my gosh, like I'm like almost in tears. I'm just so grateful. I'm just so honored. We're almost wrapping up. What are some like last little nuggets that you want to drop on people? And this is also the shameless plug, time of the show. Where can people find you and get more information and get in touch and do work with you?
Okay, great. And by the way, we have seen, as I say, stage 4 cancers reverse. We had one a year ago at a retreat of ours, and after one Power of Eight session, one 10-minute session, this
Shut
woman
up.
said, I am healed. Woman with stage 4 melanoma goes home to her doctors. They couldn't find cancer anymore. And they had told her she had 3 or 4 months to live. That's how powerful it can be. So I'm running all kinds of courses. I have courses for everybody's purse, everybody's bank balance, and a lot of free material on lynnmctaggart.com. I have information about the very rudimentaries about how to set up a Power of Eight group, a community where you can just advertise, just put up a post saying, hey, anybody else in this time zone? And then if you want to study with me, there's everything from recorded courses like the New Science to level 1 courses like Intention Essentials, and my big master class where we put you in groups according to your time zone and your preferred meeting times. You meet with me live and interactive on Zoom for 6 sessions, we put you into groups, you meet with them once a week, we monitor your progress. You get coaching from me through the year, and that's kicking off February 17th. So if you want to be part of that this year, please check it out. But in any case, we have lots of free tools too, if you want to take intention out there into the world. So
I've got to check out your resort.
Oh, we have a retreat called, Heal Your Past. And I work with Brian Hubbard, my husband, who has developed a whole system called Time Light for getting over a lot of the traumas and the incidents in the past that hold you back. And I work on time travel intention, where we help you take back your power. And we have many, many situations where people have healed extraordinary traumas. And they've told us it's life-changing. One of those was the woman with stage 4 melanoma. We hold it in a great, big, fabulous 16th century stately home, a mansion, the runner-up for Downton Abbey's location, by the way. It's on 3,000 acres in Yorkshire. It's an amazing spiritual place too, with beautiful facilities, spa, fire pits, labyrinths, all kinds of things that work perfectly for us. So if you want to check that out, we do a retreat once a year. Check it out on lynnmctaggart.com.
I know what's going up on my vision board. Oh my gosh, incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you again from the bottom of my heart for joining me today. I appreciate you so much. So grateful. And everybody else out there, make sure to have a healthy day. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care, Heather. Bye, everyone.
If you learned anything, even one little nugget in any episode, please do not keep us a secret. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple, on Spotify. That is how we get this information out there and we change this paradigm one person at a time. I can't do it by myself. I need your help. Also, make sure to know that disclaimer, anything that you hear on this, you cannot hold Discovering Health LLC, Renegade Health Boss, the Line Boss, Heather Gray, liable for anything. Always consult your doctor before doing anything new. Do not take this as medical advice. This is your disclaimer. And then also, if you want to know the foundations of health, right? All that I talk about on how I get healthy, the absolute foundation: sleep, diet, exercise, what to eat, toxins, how to detox mold, all of it. You can get it in your own course at rhbcourses.com, right? Start your healing journey today as little as $79. Start today, rhbcourses.com. Stay tuned and thanks for joining us.